So, welcome everyone. I'm Alexander Mihalcha, and today we're joined by Mike Davies, Managing Director of Catalyst Interiors. Thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
Before we dive in, could you give us a quick overview of what Catalyst Interiors does?
Yeah, of course. So we're a specialist interior design and fit out company. We focus exclusively on care homes. We try to create environments that do more than just look beautiful. They feel beautiful too. Our approach is quite unique, and we call it experiential interior design, and it considers the sensory and emotional and sort of physical needs of the residents, particularly those living with dementia. Unlike traditional interior designers who focus purely on aesthetics, we design spaces that evoke feelings of happiness, safety, belonging. And our work isn't just about the furniture and the wallpaper, it's about creating meaningful experiences for people who live and work in these spaces every day.
That's fascinating. And what inspired you to create Catalyst Interiors? Was there a specific moment or experience that sparked this journey?
I think it was over the years, we've always sort of tried to be a little bit ahead of the game. Many years ago, we're about 25 years old now. So many years ago, when we first started doing this, care homes weren't particularly nice places. They were a little bit glum, and they didn't put a lot of time and effort into the interiors. It was very much a commercial thing, and quite often they were a bit bleak. We started to try and change that. I worked many years ago for a company called Westminster Healthcare, and they had a guy who I thought was quite a visionary leader, a guy called Pat Carter, and he was really wanted to concentrate on making the places nicer for the people. And if it meant spending a tiny bit more money on the interiors, well, that was all well and good, because the people who live there deserved better than they were currently
Right,
getting.
right.
And so we started to try and improve things. And over our 25-year journey, we've always tried to make the environment really important, and to try and drive the quality of the environment forward. And I think we've been a little bit of a leader in that, and trying to people who didn't originally want to spend the money on these interiors now realise that if they don't spend the money on the interiors, they won't get the residents. So it's now started to become a commercial choice to make them
Right.
nice. But our intentions were to make them really fit for purpose for the residents. And yes, they are a commercial place, but you can actually get a place that's really nice without spending a great deal more. Need to be a bit more considerate and a bit more thoughtful about how you design those environments.
Okay. And what was your background before starting this venture?
My personal background, I was an engineer. I started off as a electrical engineer, and I worked for many different organisations outside of healthcare. And the last one was a company called MK Electric. They make electrical components and cable management and such like. And I was working for them. I was involved in some overseas factory builds, and it was at about the time that we were starting a family, and it was traveling abroad was a bit difficult at the time and wasn't conducive with bringing up a young family. So I started looking for another job, and I found a job as property director for Westminster Healthcare, which started us on this journey. And then some years later, when Westminster looked like they were going to sell, I decided I'd set up Catalyst Interiors, and so we would then become a specialist interior design and fit out company that we could go and work for any organization then.
So let's go back to when you first started. What major challenges or gaps did you see in the market that made you decide this needs to be solved?
I think it was convincing people that they needed to do things differently, because it's a challenge that we have now, still trying to convince people that there's something better than they're currently doing. And an example of that, I got it here. An example of that would be, we all used to use one of these phones. It's the Nokia
Right.
3310. It's a blast from the past, and all it used to do was make phone calls, make text messages, and do
Right.
Tetris and Snake, and you could do a couple of games. And it's almost like when you had one of those phones, you thought it was great. You didn't think you needed anything else. It made phone calls. It did everything you need. And then all of a sudden, somebody comes along with the iPhone, and you go, wow, it does so much more. It's so much more functional. It's so much more features in it. And that's why even today, when Apple bring out the latest iPhone, people camp outside their shops and stores to spend £1,500. And it's really important. And so what we've tried to do over the years is convince people who think they're happy with that that there is an iPhone out there, and try to say to them, look, you're currently probably happy with the way you do your interior design. You're currently probably happy with the way it all works, but you might not even know the iPhone exists. So you need to, can you talk to us and let us show you
Yeah.
how much more functional our design is compared to some other people? And that was been the same since, because answering your question about how we got, what were the challenges at the beginning, it's always been the same. Convincing people who are doing it their way that there is a
Yeah.
better way, an improved way that doesn't have to cost any more money. That and the outcome is so much better for the resident, but it also improves staff morale. You'll recruit staff better. People live in your homes longer, they fill quicker, and it's all really, really positive if you just put a bit of thought into the design. And so the challenges back then are very similar to the challenges today, convincing people who do it the way they're currently doing it that there is a better way.
Right. And I have a curiosity about this. What are the most surprising research findings about how sensory design impacts resident well-being?
There's loads and loads of stuff out there. It's quite a wide subject. Not just in design for people who are elderly. It's if you look at, you mentioned well-being, but there's a lot of research out there on how environments can affect your mood, whether that's well-being or otherwise. I mean, if you look at Disney, they're experts, aren't they, in creating
Hmm.
immersive experiences where you go to Jurassic Park World, they've got smoke and explosions and all sorts going on to make you feel a certain way. And you can definitely make people feel a certain way in an environment. So there's lots of studies out there, and specifically with care and especially with dementia care, there's lots of studies out there that talk about the different things. So, the olfactory stimulus, like to do with your smell. There's been research that says putting a smell into a dining room 15 minutes before they have, putting a scent into a dining room 15 minutes before they have the food will increase their food intake up to 25%. There's been evidence in studies that are out there that are saying that if you put scents down corridors that are calming scents like lavender and things like that, there's a noticeable improvement in the mood and manageability, shall we say, of clients, of residents who if they get upset and agitated, they're more difficult to care for. And so if you can keep them calm and happy, and you can use your environment to do that, better still. And lots of studies out there about wayfinding, because if somebody is lost all the time, they become agitated again, and agitation is totally
Right.
the opposite of what you want. If you've got a loved one and you want to put them into a care home, you want them to feel happy, loved, cared for, orientated, safe, all of those
Hmm.
things. So the environment plays a massive part in that. And there are lots and lots of studies out there showing how important wayfinding is, how important safety aspects, how important smell, and lots of things like that.
Okay, that's really interesting. And could you elaborate on why the existing solutions weren't meeting these needs?
Well, I think back to the original thing, a lot of people were designing just for the looks, like as if you're making a nice hotel. And that's great. Somebody goes in. We don't feel that meets the needs of the residents. So, for instance, our experiential design, for instance, we take all those words we just spoke about before and said,
Yeah.
if we want a resident to feel happy, loved, safe, cared for, orientated, well, then let's take happiness, for instance. So, what's the difference between happiness and joy, and how can we inject that into the environment and make the person feel happier and feel more content? And, to do that, you have to think about, well, what does happy look like, smell like, sound like, taste like, feel
Hmm.
like? And not only the stimulus that you get from the room, but we also have an inbuilt knowledge that's built up over time of what happiness looks and feels like. So if you don't think about this, you can't create it. So when you start thinking about what does happiness look like and what can we see that might increase our happiness, well, the artwork, the ornaments, just general ambience of the place. So if we then try and design it so that we can try and curate that feeling, well, then there's a better chance that the resident is going to feel that way in our building. And so if we look at each one of those, what does safety look like, smell like, sound like, feel like? What does happiness look like? What does loved feel like. And if we can think about those things and create them, put them into our environments, they'll be a much better place for that resident to live. And so in answer to your question about, what is currently not, what needs to change is just basically thinking about that and making it a better place. If all you're trying to do is make it look nice by saying, well, I'll pick a pretty curtain fabric and I'll pick a nice comfortable chair and a nice carpet, and so it's all about the aesthetics, well, then that'll be fine. It'll look okay. And to the normal eye, so if you walk in there and you just look at the place and say, this looks really nice. But if you walk around one of our care homes, I'll say, hey, you see the seat pad on that seat? That's a massive contrast to the carpet, and that's because you'll be able to, when you want to sit on the seat, you'll be able to see the seat better because it's a contrast to the flooring. You see how the skirting board is a stark contrast to the flooring. That's so that when people are walking down the corridor, they're not bumping into the walls or anything because they can see the edges of the corridor better. You see the chairs, they've got piping around all the upholstery. That's so they can pick out the shape of the chair better, because people who are elderly often have, first of all, they've got physical ailments, that just happen by being old. They might have cataracts and their mobility might be compromised. But also, if they've started to get dementia, how your brain interprets the signals it's seeing from the eyes and feeling from your hands is very different as well, and that's impaired. So everything we can do to try and improve the outcome for the resident, to make them feel better, feel safer, and use their own senses that they've got to understand the environment around them. And so they're the shortfalls, and again, it's mostly about just picking the right interior designer and making sure that you've got a joined up approach. And the other thing that's important is getting in early as well, because what a lot of people do is, in the process of the construction, they'll start building the building and they get the interior designer when the building's half up. And really, you need to get the interior designer right at the start, because then you get a much more holistic building, and it's not just about the finishes for the interior designers, it's about many, many more things. The lighting, how the lighting is, where it's placed, where the flooring splits are, and the colours between one floor and another, to make sure that the residents don't see them as steps or holes in the floor.
Okay, that's really makes sense. And walk us through how Catalyst Interiors addresses these challenges. What makes your approach unique?
So we'll try and get to speak to a client as early as we can. That's really important. And, if we can get the earlier, the better. We will get the plans of his building. We will then do a complete design of the building, not just the items you can see that are aesthetically pleasing, but we'll look at everything right down to knives, forks, spoons, tablecloths, everything that goes into a care home. If you tip it upside down and it falls out, we've considered what that is and try and make sure it fits. Artwork, ornaments, all a part of the overall aesthetic and functionality of the building. So we will look at all of that. We'll put a set of documents together, finishing schedules, lists of things that you need to buy, finishing schedules of flooring, wallpapers, tiles, lighting schedules, and we put a full suite of documentation together to hand over to the contractor and the client, so that when they are building the building, they take into consideration all of the things that we need to do. If we want to add scent into a room, they'll obviously need to facilitate that by putting the electric sockets in place where we need them. If we're going to have certain types of lighting, there's some really, really good advances on lighting, circadian lighting being one of the things which helps residents sleep and relax and regulates their body clock. And so we get involved, and we'll do a whole series of documentation so that when the builders build that, okay, and then when it's ready to have the furniture and all the ornaments and all the artwork and all of the features put in, we'll come along in that last week, and over a week or so we'll put the whole building together. And when we walk out, it's a fully functional, aesthetically pleasing, functionally pleasing, talks to the residents' emotional needs and psychological needs, as well as just the aesthetics of the building.
Yeah, right. And what are the essential elements that make a care home space emotionally supportive rather than just functional?
It's what I've already spoken about the design and how we help design it. Also, something I forgot to say before is that we can't do the design. Well, we can do the design alone, but we prefer to do it with the operational people of the people who are going to operate the care home, because I don't think you can divorce the environment and how people then will use that environment going forward, and how they'll use the environment that you've created for them. And so talking to the operations teams, talking to all the stakeholders is really important. And the care then is just as important. It's outside of our control. But what makes a truly, truly great care home is the people who care for them, care for the residents, along with the environment they live in. And if you get both of those things right, you've got this really, really powerful, powerful formula, which will definitely provide the most optimum experience for the resident, because that's the most important person in the equation.
Okay. And when you talk to potential clients, what's the biggest misconception they typically have about what you do?
So many people think we're going to be expensive because they see the quality of what we provide, and they look at it. If they know about us, they'll know that, for the last 6 years, we've won the Best Interior Design Award at the National Care Awards. We're just about to get a very big, I'm not really allowed to say what it is, but we're about to get a very big honour award in May. More about that if you follow us on social media and such like. And so if people think that because we do really nice work, that we're expensive, and we're no more expensive than our competitors, interior designers. And then the other misconception is back to this, and I keep going on about it, it's back to this, is that they think they're happy with what they've got, but they don't know, that this exists. They
Yeah,
think that this is okay, and because that's the aesthetically pleasing one, and that's the
yeah.
one with all the functionality. And so it's just getting people to understand and to talk to us and to see what we do, and let them understand that we're not too expensive, and that that we're there, and we think that we can really improve the outcome for their organisation. It's a win-win. We get more
Hmm.
business, we get a better spread of clients, and the clients get access to what we feel is leading edge design and principles,
Right, right.
strategies.
And could you share a specific success story of a client who saw significant results using your solution?
Yeah. So I think I'm just trying to think of a really good example for you. So most of our stuff draws on research, and when we look at a space and we talk to a client about what we're trying to achieve, the client will often give us problems that they have that we can try and find solutions for. One of the difficulties when you're putting together a brand new care home is that you don't know the residents who they're going to be, because it's an empty care home. So if you knew, well, in this area there's some residents who've got this problem, we can design around that, but you don't. We design it for the residents, we design it for the staff, we design it for everybody. And some of the biggest impacts we've had has been around our wayfinding strategy. So
Yeah,
we've developed this wayfinding strategy. Most people, when they design care homes, the way they'll deal with wayfinding and helping orientate the residents is they'll make corridors certain colours. So you're in the blue corridor and I'm in the red corridor or whatever. They might theme corridors, maybe have a corridor that's full of artwork that's sporting or seaside or something like that. And there are things called memory boxes that they sometimes put outside a person's room, where it's a box on the wall where they can put in some of their own memorabilia or whatever. And as they walk along the corridor, they'll see that and they'll know it's their room. Well, they're all well and good, but if I'm in a lounge somewhere halfway around the building, I can't see my corridor. I can't see the color of my corridor. I can't see the artwork. I can't see my memory box outside my
yeah.
door. So how am I going to get from that lounge to my room as successfully, as trouble-free as possible? So we've established a wayfinding strategy which helps do that, and it's born out of some studies that were done, and we've looked at those studies. We've read how they were undertaken. We've read the outcomes, and we've developed a strategy. And our strategy, without taking too long to explain it, is based around waypoints in a building. So, for instance, if I was giving you directions to my office and I gave you all the street names and said you take a right up Church Street, a left down Queen Street, or whatever, you might not remember that. But if I said right at the church, left at the bank, right at the pub, you're more likely to remember those key areas that I told you about. And that's the same with someone with dementia. Even though they might have memory issues, it's been proven by this study that if you point out waypoints around the building, they will almost certainly have the capability to remember those and then use them ongoing in their wayfinding. So if you have a
Absolutely.
resident who's new to a care home, and then you come out of the lounge, and let's say there's a corridor going left to right,
Hmm.
if within a meter you've got something that's really noticeable, like a small statue of Charlie Chaplin or something like that, and over there you've got a small, phone box about 2 foot high, and they're right next to the wall. They're not obscuring the corridor. They're there, and you say to that person, "Look, your room, you go past the phone box." Or
Yeah.
your room, you go past Charlie Chaplin. So they know straight away when they come out of that door, they look left and right, they see Charlie Chaplin, and they will automatically go down there. And then every
Right.
time you get to a place where they need to make a decision, left or right or straight on, you put some other waypoints in as they look at. And then so you'll remember, I go past Charlie Chaplin, I go past the Eiffel Tower, and then you'll get down to your corridor, and you'll know then that I'm on this red corridor, and then I'm near my room because I'm near the piece of artwork that shows Doris Day or somebody like a famous old
Hmm.
film actor or actress. And so it's quite a simple concept, but actually, and most of the ideas around experiential design are quite simple, but it's the fact that you've thought about them and done them to make them better. So
Yeah.
without our experiential design, you've got a resident who might be leaving that lounge and be lost every single day of his life, and
Hmm.
really struggle every time to find his way to his room. He'll be wandering aimlessly and getting really, really upset. With our experiential design, if you walk him to his room 2 or 3 times, he'll remember it, or she will
Hmm.
remember it, and
Yeah. Yeah.
it's a massive, massive help. Now, how I can't explain that to any of my potential clients unless they sit with me and let me talk to them about it, because they think they're okay with this.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
realize that the
Right.
wayfinding strategy I'm giving them is this.
Right.
And so it's a really, really frustrating thing. But when we do speak to people and they do let us through the door to talk to them, you know, it's always a very, very good outcome, a very good positive conversation and a very good outcome. And that's one example. Another one would be, quickly, is that flooring. There's been studies out there that say that colours, every single colour has a grayscale. So if you took a photograph of something and it's full of colour, if you took it using a black and white camera, well, then everything would be grey, somewhere between white and black, a grey colour. So whatever colour you've got. So if it
Right.
was a blue, that blue would be a sort of a grey. And there's a thing called LRV, light reflective value, which goes between 0 and 100, where black is 0 LRV because it doesn't reflect any light, and white is 100 LRV because it reflects lots of light. And every colour will have a grey if you take a black and white photo of it, and so it will have a number on the grayscale. It'll have a number of LRV somewhere between 0 and 100. Studies have proven that if you've got two pieces of flooring that go together, say a lounge meets a dining room or a corridor meets a bedroom, if that flooring has an LRV difference of bigger than 8 points, it will potentially be seen by somebody who's old or certainly with dementia as a step. And if it's a step and they try to step over it, they might end up one day falling. And falling is one of the big killers for people who are aging over 70 years old. If you fall, you're quite high likelihood of break a hip. And normally 1 in 3 people who break a hip over 70 will be dead within 90 days. It's quite a startling thing. So if we can get the flooring right to avoid them stepping over steps that aren't there, it will be miles safer for them and they can navigate their way around. And indeed, we've done some measurements, and care homes that we design have a lower than average fall rate, slip,
Right.
trips and
Right.
falls. We've done some research on that. Using LRV in a way of making sure that flooring is close to less than 8 points, so it's safe. The bit I spoke about before about a chair, seat pad, and the floor. Well, if you want to see a difference, if you want to disguise a difference, it's less than 8 points. And if you want to expose a difference, so I want the seat pad to be very different to the floor, it's bigger than 30 points. So if I look at the flooring and that's got an LRV of 10, I need to make sure my seat pad has got an LRV of 40 or more. And then that will be really, really distinguishable. And the same with things you want to see, you disguise. As things you want to see, you create a big contrast, and things you want to disguise, a smaller contrast. So if there's doors in a corridor that you don't want the resident to go into, they could be staff areas or they could be sluice areas, make the door less than 8 points difference in colour to the wall, and they may not even
Yeah.
notice the door's there. If it's a door you want them to see, like a toilet or a bathroom, make it more than 30 points different to the wall, and they're very much likely to see that door is a door rather than just an extension of the wall. So there are lots and lots of tricks you can do, most of them backed by study, to make the environment much better.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And for example, looking at the broader industry, what key trends are you seeing emerge?
Well, we think we're trying to be a bit of a trendsetter by introducing experiential design, but a lot of the other stuff is technology. Now, technology is moving on, apace, and I guess one of the difficulties is there's so much of it. It's finding out which are the ones that are the best and trying to. A lot of the technology have got their own software platforms, so you've got lots and lots of software platforms developed into one. And I think moving forward, getting people to talk to a single software platform so that everybody's products can gel together will be good. But the biggest trend I think at the moment is technology. Technology is moving forward at a rate of knots. There's a challenge outside of the aesthetics and pleasing interiors, where it's becoming very difficult for operators now to build care homes from a point of view of economy. The cost of building a care home has gone through the roof over the last 5 or 6 years. Certainly since COVID, it's probably up over 25% to build a care home now. But the cost of loaning money to do it hasn't gone down. Staffing prices have gone up with the national insurance rise and the minimum wage rise. Cost of actually operating a care home has gone up. So it's now squeezing the revenue that the operators can make really, really tight. So it's making it difficult, which is more of a reason why you should have efficient, happy care homes, because if you don't need to work so hard and you keep your staff, because staff can go anywhere now to earn the same money, they can sometimes get better money by stacking the shelves in a local supermarket. So trends are about budget and how we can get the most out of what we do, and technology seem to be the
Okay,
big
okay,
changes
okay,
at
I
the
see.
moment.
I see. And how are these trends affecting how businesses operate in our space?
I think the finance thing is massive. The finance thing is massive because people are holding back a little bit on developing. People who would like to develop more, like to create more care homes, and the actual demographic picture is telling you that you need more care homes. There is a shortfall in beds at the moment, and there will continue to be a shortfall in beds. The demographics say that the population of people over 85 is set to double by 2040. So, if you think about that's the age when people need to be in care, and if you are doubling the number of people over 85 within the next 15, 16 years, you need to get more beds because there's already a shortage of beds. But the problem is, and there's people out there who'd be willing to do it if the circumstances around it were better, but it's making it really difficult at the moment. So if we're not careful, we're going to have a future where we've got a lot of old people with nowhere to go. So we need to do something about building these places more affordable for the.
Okay, okay, makes sense. And what do you think most business owners are getting wrong when they're trying to address this specific problem?
I wouldn't say that there's anybody getting it wrong. I think that they've been put into a set of circumstances, certainly from the finances, that make it difficult. If you talk about getting it wrong from a design point of view, again, getting it wrong implies that they are doing something wrong. I think getting it wrong is just the opposite of not getting it perfect. And so, if you're a developer or an architect or a care home operator who isn't using experiential design, who isn't using Catalyst or someone like Catalyst, I wouldn't be as rude as to say you're getting it wrong, but I don't think you're getting it right. There's a difference, and I think that, you should start to explore what's out there in the same way as technology. Just building a care home to look nice isn't enough anymore. People are understanding that these places need to have a deeper, more meaningful psychological and well-being aspect to them. And there is, it is out there, it is there, but a lot of people just don't know it exists and where to look for it, because one thing about this industry, people are very, very loyal to their supply chain. And so there may be somebody who's been using an interior design company or an architect or whatever for years and years and years, and they've built up a really good relationship. And that relationship, has served them well so far. And so they carry on doing that. But they don't, if you're not careful, other things around you are moving on at pace. And your competitors who are using people like us who are doing things a little bit differently, you can lose it. You can lose it. Your footing in the market, really, if you're not careful. So I think,
Right.
I wouldn't say people are getting it wrong, but they could probably do a bit better.
And also, what advice would you give to business owners who want to stay ahead of these changes?
I think it's time now to take a total look at how you do things. The way we've been building care homes and kitting them out and operating them in the last 10 years has been great, but I think it's going to be very different in the next 10. So if you're developing buildings the same way today that you did last year and the year before, and all you're really doing is creating care homes that are fit for today. And I think you should just look at everything, look at the way we use a care home. People in the past have said, oh, well, we've got a gym or we've got a cinema. And these are sort of show ponies, really, that quite often they're not used. So how can we get meaningful spaces, yet spaces that do get used and that do add value to the business and to add value to the actual residents and add real impact in their daily life? So how can we look at those things, look at how we design a building, look how we kit it out, look at what's going to be the trends going forward, and how can we future-proof our buildings? And I think that's something I think that's really important going forward.
As we wrap up, what's next for Catalyst Interiors? Any exciting developments on the horizon?
Well, we want to, really, really push the experiential interior design. If you go onto our website, it doesn't really speak about it much because we're still in development. We are doing it, we're actively using it, but it's still in development, and it's very, very exciting because each time a new study comes out, our people will look at it and we look to see how we can add that to experiential design. But also, we are also getting into refurbishments now because as care homes are starting to get older, there's exciting opportunities in refurbishing them. But instead of just going in and giving them a lick of paint and painting them and making them look nice, we can then start applying some of our experiential design principles because a lot of it can be retrofitted. And also the way that care homes were designed and laid out in the 80s and 90s and 2000s aren't necessarily the way you do it now. So rather than just give it a lick of paint, what about reconfiguring it a little bit to make it a bit more operational, not just for now, but for the future, as we just spoke about? So I think the excitement for us is also going to be looking overseas. We've got 8 projects currently in LA. We're looking into the Emirates marketplace because we think that that's going to be massive. We've got a couple of projects in Malta, and we're just about to appoint an agent in Malta because there's that much activity over there. So expanding our services overseas. We really think we're only just scratching the surface in the UK. I think we're probably about 5% of the UK market, so we'd like to get that up to, double figures. And there's a lot of exciting opportunities out there. So watch this space.
Perfect, perfect. And for listeners who want to learn more or potentially work with Catalyst Interiors, what's the best way to get in touch?
The best way to get in touch would be go to our website, www.catalystinteriors.co.uk, and there's a page on there to get in touch. Or if you just look for us on the web, in general, do a web search, you'll find all our contacts. I'm on LinkedIn, and we've got all the social media accounts. If you are watching this and you are up for a chat, give me a call because we'd be delighted to talk to you, see if we can improve what you're doing and make a difference together.
Perfect, perfect. Thank you for sharing those insights about you, about your company, and about the whole story. And thank you for this amazing podcast session.
And thank you for the opportunity. It's been great. I look forward to speaking to you again sometime, maybe.
Perfect. So, see you in the next episodes. Bye.
Bye bye.